Test. Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test. Here we go. Welcome back, folks. We got the Trivium here. It's been a while. I took a little break after the poetry section. It kind of sucked my soul out of my body. Poetry was tough. There was a lot of big words that I couldn't pronounce. Who would have guessed poetry was so in-depth and fascinating, surprisingly? But I'm going to have years of just reviewing that poetry section because it was intense. My brain needed a couple days to relax for a little bit because we got the logic section, which is going to be even crazier. But I think I'm more inept to handle the vocabulary of logic rather than poetry. It is peculiar to say that, but I got my sunflower bookmark, and we are going to jump right into logic, reading from the Trivium, The Ancient Art of Reason. Logic is the art of reason, by Earl Fontainelle. Introduction. Everyone has had the experience of hearing a series of statements and thinking, that's logical. Most of us seem innately, I-N-N-A-T-E-L-Y. It looks like innately, but it's just put in a weird way. Most of us seem innately to be able to reason from causes to effects. We exercise our rational faculty every time we cross the road to avoid an oncoming car. A small child, though, may be unable to make the connection between speeding car and need to get out of the way. So how do we get from the childhood state to one where we avoid the car as a matter of course? How do we create rules for valid inference? While reason enables us to plan for the future, understand the past, and engage successfully with the present, logic is interested in the laws by which reason operates. Logicians want to know what makes one argument valid and another plain wrong. This can be very useful because people do not always think or speak the truth. They can be in error. They can lie, and they can rationalize in crooked ways. See page 384. Okay, I'm on 177. Relax. I'm getting there. It is for this reason that logic rather than grammar was considered by some to be the foundation of Trivium. Interesting. Of all the arts, the first and most general is logic, then grammar, and last of all rhetoric. Since there can be much use of reason without speech, but no use of speech without reason. Whoo! What a quote! What a quote! What a quote! That is a banger quote. Let's read that again. Of all the arts, first and most general is logic, then grammar, and last of all rhetoric. Since there can be much sense of reason without speech, but no use of speech without reason. John Milton, Preface of the Art of Logic. This book explores the fundamental elements of practical logic and the process of reasoning and action. Along the way, the reader will be challenge to question everyday assumptions, to identify common logical fallacies, to wrestle with interactable paradoxes, and to take part in the ongoing search for truth. Sign me up. Damn. Intractable paradoxes. I don't know why I wanted to highlight that real quick. Everyday assumptions, common logical fallacies, and the ongoing search for truth. Dialectic and the Socratic method. We all have opinions. We all argue sometimes. In ancient Greece, when two or more philosophers used reasoned arguments to try to get to the truth of something over which they disagreed, they were said to be engaged in dialectic from gr. I don't know what that's short for. It's like doctor, but gr. Digelian, to converse or dispute. Digelian. And this is reminding me of the Hegelian dialectic. Diagelian. Okay. There are many ways to win an argument. The 5th century BC Greek sophists delighted in the arts of oratory, public speaking, and debate, oratorical competition. Using rhetoric, clever linguistic devices to persuade audiences and to demonstrate their own arete, A-R-E-T-E with an accent mark over the E, which means excellence. However, Socrates, 470 through 399 BC, argued the truth mattered the most, and that this could be best revealed through reason and logic and discussion. To tease out the truth, Socrates employed a method which involved a number of steps. Step 1. Agatha asserts a thesis. Justice should treat everyone equally. Socrates gets Agatha to agree to further premises. Surely, you would agree that someone who is mad is not responsible for their actions. Socrates shows how these new premises apply the opposite of the original thesis. So justice should not treat everyone equally. A new thesis, more refined, is now advanced. This technique was developed by Plato, Aristotle, and medieval, M-E-D-I-E-V-A-L. Is that a person? No way. That's just the time frame, right? Medieval and 19th century philosophers. And medieval and 19th century philosophers. Today it commonly takes the form thesis, I say, don't you think Sheila is wonderful? Antithesis, on the contrary, I disagree. She hurt Bill terribly. Synthesis, let's try again. Yeah, Sheila is complicated. That's the Hegelian dialectic that I know. While dialectic describes what people do every day as they dispute and reason back and forth, logic from logos, reason or speech, deals with the aspects of dialectic which is concerned with validity. Over the centuries, the techniques by which the truth of statements and the validity of arguments have been determined and measured have changed immeasurably. Modern logical languages are so unforgiving that a single spelling mistake or wrong Boolean operator, see page 224, in a large computer program can bring a country to its knees. These mathematical logical languages are not, however, the primary subject of this book. These pages instead mostly deal with the kind of logic we all use every day. The logic inherent in our spoken language, the logic that we use to convince children to brush their teeth, the logic we use to convince politicians to care for our future. Some philosophers claim that true dialectic is a way of life resulting in a transcendent apprehension of truth. The seventh Platonic epistle sets the highest philosophical truth beyond the reach of words. For it is not all speakable like other subjects of study, but from much working together on the matter itself and living in company, suddenly a light, as it were leaping from fire, kindles the soul, and thenceforth grows on its own. And there's a picture of woodcut of a teacher and student, Strasbourg, 1499. The medieval tradition continued the classical practice of philosophical dialectic, with teacher and student disputing together over logical problems. In modern times, mathematical logic has evolved into more of a solitary art, while conversational dialectic remains as alive as ever. Page 180. Truth and fallacy. My favorite fallacy, by the way, is the fallacy. Just because it's a fallacy doesn't mean the conclusion isn't true. Truth and fallacy. Two wrongs don't make a right. In logical reasoning, the goal is less understanding that something is true and more understanding or explaining why something is true. For thousands of years, philosophers have held that in an argument, two things are necessary for a sound conclusion. The premise must be true and the reasoning must be valid. That makes sense. Validity depends for a sound conclusion. Okay. Validity depends on the types of inference made in the argument, the form of the argument, and has nothing to say about the truth of the premise or the conclusion. So in fact, an argument may be valid without being sound. Premise: if the grass is green, it's Monday. Premise: the grass is green, therefore it's Monday, which is not valid. This unsound but valid modus ponens argument is nonsensical because the initial premise is false, and similarly, modus ponens, P-O-N-E-N-S, an invalid argument can have a true conclusion. All flowers are plants. Roses are plants. Roses are flowers. An invalid argument can have a true conclusion. This argument is invalid because its middle term is undisputed. Roses are plants. I'm having trouble understanding that. Here's another one. All cats have 4 legs. I have 4 legs, therefore I'm a cat. Okay, I see that. That's a better example. Invalid reasoning causes flawed arguments known as fallacies, and there are 2 main species of these sublogical creatures. Formal fallacies are problems with the form of the argument. They involve invalid inferences, so are said to be formally invalid. One nasty formal fallacy is the conclusion which denies premise. No one goes to that bar anymore. Why? It's too crowded. The conclusion that denies premise. Wow. That's a cool one. Informal fallacies arise from the matter rather than the form of the argument. Linguistic ambiguity, sneaky misdirection, and other problems can turn a validly formed argument into a fallacy. And the informal fallacy of cum hoc ergo propter hoc. That's an interesting word. With this, therefore, because of this, a false cause is imagined between events. With this, Therefore, because of this. That doesn't even make sense, just saying that. But here's an example. Every day I boil my kettle. Hey, there is no elephants around here. How about that? Boiling my kettle keeps elephants away. Okay, so like no correlation, basically. Cum hoc ergo propter hoc. The study of fallacies is important for the aspiring logician and examples will appear throughout this book. Sometimes they are introduced into arguments by mistake, but they are also wielded by, here's a good word, unscrupulous orators to win disputes by a nefarious means. Smart logicians can quickly identify the fallacies fed to them every day by parents, politicians, pundits, advertisers, and teenagers, all those who may have a vested interest in their deception. Beautifully said. Reasoning. Elementary, my dear. There are four main ways to form a logical conclusion. Deductive reasoning moves from the general to the practical, producing a necessary conclusion whose truth follows from that of the premise. It is the motor behind the syllogism, other instruments of traditional logic, and modern computers. Mythical animals do not really exist. Werewolves are mystical animals. Werewolves do not really exist. Given the truth of the assumption, a valid deduction will always lead to a true conclusion. Inductive reasoning begins with the practical and proceeds to the general. Oh, excuse me, I was tired already. Things are observed, then a rule or cause is proposed to account for them. This allows for measurable general laws to be formulated, which facilitate our daily lives and permit science to advance by hypotheses, tests, and theories. I see an apple falling from a tree. I see it happen again and again. I form a hypothesis to explain it. Further experiments support my hypothesis, and it is elevated to a theory, part of a law. The conclusion is probable rather than certain, which is why, strictly speaking, no scientific theory is regarded as being true. Abductive reasoning infers the truth of the best explanation for a set of facts, even if the explanation includes unobserved elements. Sorry, just wanted to reread one of the things I just read. I didn't comprehend it, which is why, strictly speaking, no scientific theory is regarded as being true. Because the conclusion is probable rather than certain. Jesus. I see an apple falling from a tree. I see it happen again and again. I form a hypothesis to explain it. Further experiments for my it is elevated to a theory, part of law. The conclusion is probable rather than certain. Which is why, strictly speaking, no scientific theory is regarded as being true. That's why it's a theory, obviously. Abductive reasoning infers the truth of the best explanation for a set of facts, even if the explanation includes unobserved elements. It is the process of making educated guesses at why some given set or circumstances is the case. As such, it benefits from the application of Occam's razor. Diagnosticians and detectives commonly employ abductive reasoning. We got deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, abductive reasoning. If it rains, the grass becomes wet. The grass is wet, it is most likely that it rained. The conclusion is probable, but not exclusive. Someone might have watered the lawn. Analogical reasoning transfers information from a particular source to a particular target. It plays a central role in problem solving and cognitive perception by using comparison, similarities, and correspondences. It is always preceded by inductive reasoning. Many objects have been observed to share certain characteristics, We induce a class of these things by their common characteristics and name it apples. We observe a target which shares characteristics we have found to be typical of apples. We reason analogically that this is also an apple. The conclusion is only probable. It could be a plastic apple. Analogical reasoning helps us observe patterns in the world and make on-the-spot decisions every day. However, if the wrong patterns are used, it falls into analogical fallacy. Statements and arguments saying what is what. For the Greek philosopher Aristotle, the basic building blocks of argument were statements made up of subjects and predicates, i.e., what we are talking about and what we are saying about it. Today, logicians recognize a number of basic types of statements. Predicative statement, cats are mammals. The most simple statement where S is the subject and the predicate, and P is the predicate. Okay, what we were talking about and what we were saying about it. Okay. Conjunctive statement, P and Q. Animals are reptiles. As in S is P and Q, as in S is P and Q. Crocodiles are animals and reptiles. What? Note that the predictions can be separated out. Let me reread that, bear with me. Conjunctive statement. P and Q, period. Animals and reptiles. As in S is P and Q. Crocodiles are animals and reptiles. Note that the predications can be separated out, e.g. S is P, S is also Q. Okay, I can see that. I'm following now. Disjunctive statement. P or Q. There are three kinds: S or Q, or R or is P. This is like written so weirdly. Either you or I, or Balthazar, or Mavis, or Myrtle, or will win can extend to cover all options. S is P or Q. A person is dead or alive. S is P or T is Q. Either I'll win or you'll do a headstand. Oh man, this is exhausting. Logic. It's not easy to wrap your head around. Also had just a long day. I might end at 30 minutes today. Sorry folks. I'm just out of it. Conditional hypothetical statement. If S then P, if the sun shines, the beach will be busy. The first part is called the antecedent. The second the consequent. And this is for conditional hypothetical statement. The logical material link between them is called the nexus. The nexus, the truth of falsity, F-A-L-S-I-T-Y, or if Robert has a vision, all will be well, depends on how we define the connection between Robert's vision and subsequent events. If this nexus does not hold, then the statement will be unsound and produce the informal fallacy of the flawed nexus. If music is playing, it is snowing, is fallacious, since even if it happens to be true, there is no logical or substantive nexus between music and snow. Conditionals behave differently in formal logic. Comparative statement is like B in this respect, or comparative statement, A is like B in this respect. Tangerines are like small oranges. This is analogical reasoning. When making a comparative statement, beware the analogical fallacy, where some mistakenly assume that because two or more things are similar in one way, they must be similar in others. Once you have two or more statements, they can be combined to form arguments, which proceed from the known, the premises, to the previously unknown, the conclusion. A common example is the argument from universal to particular. All equals sum/1. All meerkats are cool, therefore this meerkat is cool. If a universal statement is true, a particular version with the same subject and predicate is also true. While it is valid to move from universal to particular, the reverse, the move from particular to universal, where, I guess that's a fallacy, the move from particular to universal, where a case of group of cases infer a more general rule, is an informal fallacy of unjustified induction. Many politicians, why can't it just be analogical fallacy? I guess it's inductive and not analogical. They're very similar because analogical precedes induction, or no, induction precedes analogical. But what a headache. I'm trying to wrap my head around it all. I'm trying to remember it all. Okay. Unjustified induction. Many politicians break their campaign promises. All politicians are liars. All politicians may indeed be liars, but we can't prove it like this. And on that, you have my word. And it's a politician with his fingers crossed behind his back. Propositions. Value, quality, modality, and quantity. Yeah, guys, I'm sorry. I'm tired. I tried to read a little bit today. But, we'll pick it back up hopefully tonight if I have some more energy tomorrow for sure. Take care, y'all. Thanks for watching. I can't believe the